Αν και η οικονομία θεωρείται το ισχυρό χαρτί του Ντόναλντ Τραμπ, πολλοί Αμερικανοί οικονομολόγοι προειδοποιούν για τις επιπτώσεις που θα έχουν αν εφαρμοστούν οι προεκλογικές του δεσμεύσεις εντός και εκτός Ηνωμένων Πολιτειών. Μεταξύ αυτών είναι και ο κορυφαίος Αμερικανός οικονομολόγος Eichengreen, ειδικός σε δημοσιονομικά θέματα, που μετήχε στο συνέδριο της Τράπεζας της Ελλάδος για το δημόσιο χρέος και εκφράζει την εκτίμηση ότι όλοι οι εμπορικοί εταίροι της Αμερικής έχουν πλέον λόγο να ανησυχούν.
Mr. Eichengreen, thank you for talking to Euronews Greek. We just a few hours ago, we heard the results of the U.S. elections. As an influential and prominent American economist, did you see the landslide victory of Donald Trump coming?
No, in all honesty, I did not. And I think with the exception of one large French trader on the betting markets who put in a very large bet apparently that Trump would win not only the Electoral College but also the popular vote. Aside from that one wager, I don't think anyone really saw the magnitude, the decisiveness of the outcome.
Why did you get it wrong? How did Donald Trump manage to win the popular vote? Was it just inflation or is it more than that?
I think it was inflation. It was immigration, the fact that there had been a surge of immigrants into the United States illegally until 2024 when the Biden administration clamped down on the border. I think there is some mysterious charisma around Donald Trump. Populist leaders often have this personal, charismatic appeal. What it is exactly is lost on me personally, but I think a lot of American working class voters felt that Trump, even though he himself is by no means working class, identified with their situation and cared about it.
I want to stay on the inflation issue because we hear a lot of analysts saying that Americans have to pay more for everything and wages have not come up as much to cover for the lost disposable income. So is this, do you think, a message to other policymakers and governments in Europe, for example? Should they try harder to bring inflation down?
Well, it is a message that allowing inflation to run out of control, even for a limited period, is a political liability and can have political costs. But I would ask you also about the counterfactual. In an imaginary world where the Biden administration had not done a big fiscal stimulus in 2021 in response to COVID-19, we would have had less inflation, but unemployment would have gone up. And how would that have affected the 2024 election? People would have been voting against the Biden-Harris administration and in favor of Trump because of double-digit unemployment. So yes, there is a message about inflation, but I think we have to consider alternatives and focusing on inflation at the expense of unemployment can be a political liability as well.
We heard a lot from Mr. Trump during his campaign about tariffs, about cutting taxes. What exactly should we expect?
Well, I think we should expect Trump to try to follow through on many of his campaign ideas. In terms of tariffs, the US president has a lot of power to act unilaterally. In 1934, the president was given power to adjust tariffs on his own by the Congress, with the idea that the president would be more likely than a fractured Congress to bring tariffs down. So that's why tariff setting powers were delegated to the president. Now we have a protectionist president who can use those powers without the Congress doing anything to raise them. So I think that's what Trump will do. On the other hand, tax changes, cutting the corporate tax rate further, eliminating taxes on the tips that restaurant workers receive. Those kind of changes have to originate in the Congress. they have to be passed by the Congress, and only then can they be signed into law by the president. So there are still a few fiscal conservatives in the Congress who may be reluctant to cut taxes and blow a bigger hole in the budget deficit. Trump lacks the power on his own to do the latter.
So if he proceeds with tax cuts, are you concerned that the US debt might blow out of control?
So the deficit is already very large in the United States, on the order of 6% of national income. And I think if there were to be corporate income tax cuts and a variety of individual income tax cuts, together with the pressure that is going to be there for more defense spending, we live in a geopolitically risky world, that 6% of GDP deficit could grow. US debt in the hands of the public is 100% of GDP, so much lower than in Greece, for example. I think there is scope for it to go up without the safe asset attribute of US Treasury bonds to be immediately at risk. But we can't keep running 6, 7, 8% of GDP budget deficits indefinitely. Sometime soon, in the next few years, we're going to have to address that issue. Or, yes, I think the dollar's position as the world's currency and the safety of US Treasury bonds will be called into question.
Let's go back to tariffs. And if you had to assume what the first targets might be, will it be in Europe, in China, specific goods, specific services?
I think the first target will be China. And Trump has threatened a 60% tariff on everything that the US imports from China. And he will attempt to limit the ability of Chinese companies and exporters to route their production and exports through third countries like Vietnam and Mexico. So I think countries like Vietnam and Mexico will be the second set of targets. But Trump cares about things like internal combustion engine-driven motor vehicles. So European companies have plenty to worry about as well.
Actually, that would be my next question. I mean, is Europe justified to be concerned, worried? And countries like Greece, for example, are they more vulnerable now?
Well, I think Greece is an example of a country that's trying as hard as it can to ramp up its exports. It has a ways to go. But under this coming Trump administration, no question, exporting to the United States will become more difficult and costly. And Trump thinks that the trade balance, whether a given country or economy runs a trade surplus or a deficit with the United States, is a really important thing. Economists think it's the overall balance and not the bilateral balance between the US and any one partner that matters. Under the coming Trump administration, any country that is running a trade surplus with the United States, which Trump will see as weakening the US economy, that partner has reason to worry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.